and welcome, and thank you for joining our Resilience Matters series. Alison has a cold at the moment and a cough, so she'll be a little bit on mute today, but I'm sure we'll still add some very interesting questions. Today we're delighted to be joined by Frances Taylor, who's a sleep expert who guides busy professionals to sleep, work and live well, and is the creator of Sleep Well programs. So welcome, Frances. Great to see you.
Lovely, thank you. I'm really delighted to be talking to you, Kathy and Alison, today about the fascinating subjects that we've got. Resilience and sleep go together very well.
I know, I can't wait. And I have so many questions, so we'll try and stick to the half an hour today. So Frances, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been working in the wellbeing field for about 15 years. So I started life as a teacher, but set up in my own business not long after really delivering stress management and resilience programs. Obviously, 10, 15 years ago, it was a very different scenario to the one it is today. But I designed and delivered programs in loads of different businesses. I've worked at Pinewood Studios and got a tour of the James Bond set at the time. I've worked in universities and, big corporates. And kind of over the years, I got really interested in why sleep back then wasn't on the agenda at all. And I don't know if you identify with this, but back then, even getting some businesses to think about stress and providing support for their people, some businesses, it was still seen as really pink and fluffy. So sleep was definitely way out there. It was kind of not mentioned. Even in the programs I was running myself, it didn't play much of a prominent part. But I found, especially when I was working one-to-one, that people were starting to talk more about sleep. So I thought, this is interesting. This is something that's being overlooked. So as a kind of experiment to see what worked and to kind of build my own knowledge, really, I started running some classes in my local community. So just small groups. And at first it was based really around a lot of sort of the techniques that I would use around stress management. So lots of stuff about relaxation and good sleep habits, that kind of thing. Love delivering them, love the results. But through that, I learned that sleep was a lot more than just about learning to relax or, going to bed at the right time. There was a huge element that up till that point, I think had been quite overlooked. And that was kind of the psychological or the cognitive element of sleep and the kind of mindset. So I was really lucky. And at that time, CBTI was coming on stream as the first line recommended treatment. So that's cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, especially adapted form of CBT. And that for me was perfect because it brought together the kind of the behaviors, the physical elements of what gives us good sleep, what needs to happen in the body, and then the psychological elements. And for me, I love psychology and I love biology. So this felt like the way to go. So I went off, did my training, and then started working in more kind of intensive ways with clients, and kind of over the years have developed my programs that I now have. So for me, it's kind of been a filtering down from quite a broad base, and I'm totally passionate about sleep and it's my primary focus.
That's fascinating. I didn't even know CBTI was a thing. So
yeah,
that's fascinating.
Yeah, and it is recommended by the NHS, and you'll have seen in the press recently that GPs are being encouraged now to recommend people for CBTI. And it really is, the reason I love it is that it's properly clinically trialed. And I don't know about you, but if you've ever known someone that's got a sleeping problem, or maybe you've done it yourself, these days our first thing is to go to the internet and Google our problem. And when you Google sleep problems, you come up with some advice that's good, but some of it is just not going to sort your sleep. And that kind of really motivates me to make sure that everything I develop and deliver is clinically tested and, brings results. Because when you're lacking in sleep, the last thing you want to do is try something on the internet like, well, I've seen crazy things. I mean, more extreme things like eat bowls of expensive Morello cherries and your sleep will be fixed. Or, there's quite a lot in the press about weighted blankets. Well, they can be good for anxiety, but I don't really think they'll do it for sleep. My sister even bought an acupressure mat. So it's a mat you lie on. It's got little spikes. You lie on it. Yes, it may relax you because it's like having acupressure. But she said every time she tried to turn around, it dug in. Well, that's not. So
it's not going to help you sleep, is it, Frances?
No, I get a bit agitated about that, which is why I focus on stuff that works, stuff that's clinically trialed and brings results quickly, and reliably. So for me, if you sleep well, you then can work well, and then you live well. So it's like that perfect circle.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. So, you mentioned mindset and that neuroscience. How does resilience fit in with sleep? How is that together?
Well, for me, sleep is a fundamental pillar for health and well-being. We talk a lot about diet and exercise, but we have up till fairly recently completely ignored sleep, which is why I used to call and still do call sleep the Cinderella of good health. It's like we ignore her, she's in a corner, and we don't know that she's gone until we start to notice the impact. So for me, if you don't sleep well, you don't have the energy to, eat healthily, to get a bit more exercise, to take up a new creative hobby, all the things that you guys, I guess, might be considering as good things to build a sort of a resilient person. So, I think sleep's a brilliant place to come in at when you want to go on and change some other things in your life. And that's happened to me recently with a client who, she had a lot of physical things that she wanted to sort, but until she could get her sleep, she didn't have the energy or the capacity, really. So sleep, I think, is one of the things you need in place if you're then going to build the kind of higher layers and the wider structure of resilience.
And what stops people sleeping? How does it work? It's probably a huge topic, but just so I understand that whole sleep piece.
Yeah, well, I know the reasons people don't sleep well. I mean, do you mean how it manifests itself or the causes?
Yeah, it could be both,
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of people I see that don't prioritize sleep. So sleep is a nice to have, not an essential. It's something that you fit in when you've done everything else in your day. And of course, if you're a busy, mom or parent and you've got a job and you may be working for yourself or whatever, and you've got family and kids, there's always something to be doing, isn't there? So sleep gets pushed further and further out to the margins. And that has a kind of quite a negative cycle, because the less sleep you get, the less able you are to get through the stuff that you really need to do. So there's that whole issue of prioritization. But then there's obviously, life gets in the way of good sleep. Everybody from time to time is going to have something on their mind that's troubling them, challenging them, and it can be just life gets in the way, and and kind of sleep will reflect where you are in terms of feeling in control of your life, feeling happy about your life, and it will manifest itself if you're struggling in some way. And then it's just like there's so many other more interesting things to do sometimes, people feel, than to sleep. We can watch Netflix into the early hours. We can have a beer from the fridge at any time we want. We can chat to our friends all night long. And some of those things, especially if you're working really, really hard in the day, they're kind of what you want to do. So I was working with somebody and she was a self-employed lawyer, I think. And she just said, look, I need some time to myself. And like 1 o'clock in the morning is when I've done everything and I can have my fun. So it's about, there's all sorts of reasons, but it's about realizing that sleep actually is at the center of everything. And if you want to achieve a lot and you want to be, a good member of your family, a good member of your business, a good friend, and keep yourself in good shape, then sleep has to play a much more important part than maybe you'd want to realize.
I just jumping in there, we've had a comment here from Lee Williams, and he talks about the fact that we recover during sleep. So low sleep, no recovery and recharge. And this sort of partly makes me think about how I feel right now and the need to sleep, but also the work that I've done with the Cancer Support Centre in the past, where, you know, the first thing we do is say, prioritize sleep or relaxation, because sometimes people get so stressed about the word sleep that they, you know, actually they can't relax either. But, you know, we just say to people, that's your starting point. There's no there's nothing more powerful and foundational for you as a human being than being able to relax and being able to sleep.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And yeah, I mean, there's not one aspect of our physical health, our mental health, our cognitive health that isn't impacted by lack of sleep. So, you know, the clinical studies show that lack of sleep leads to higher blood pressure, greater risk of heart disease, risk of type 2 diabetes. We know that on a cognitive level, the neurons in the brain don't communicate in the same way if you're lacking sleep. You know, so you've got a kind of rational part of the brain and emotional part of the brain, and they don't talk to each other as well, which leads to kind of emotional thinking, loss of perspective, brain fog. Lots of accidents come as a result of sleep. The studies have shown that if you're driving, for example, on lack of sleep, you know, chronic lack of sleep, it's you know, equivalent to driving on a couple of beers or a couple of glasses of wine. Reaction time is much slower. And yeah, emotionally, you know, it's really hard to keep things in perspective when you're lacking sleep. So yeah, we don't just recover, we just it's more than recovery. It's not just kind of resetting to where we were, it's actually kind of building our health and well-being going forwards.
And what I'm interested, because there's that prioritization piece that you spoke about earlier, and we all have that within our gift to do. How do you help people who generally just can't sleep? I mean, I certainly was in this, you know, in lockdown, sleep patterns all over the place. And how do you help people to try and balance that? And they might be desperate to sleep, but how can you help them?
Help them, you mean help them specifically when they feel like they've got too much to do? Yeah.
Well, I think they're just overwhelmed and they're just sleeping.
Yeah, well, I think always talking to somebody really helps. So I've had a lot of people that have literally, you know, once we start talking to each other, they've kind of realized for the first time quite how difficult their lack of sleep has been making their lives. So just sharing, you know, everything they're trying to juggle is a really good starting point. And then because people, when you lack sleep, you do lack that ability to sort stuff out and say, right, you know, that needs doing, I can leave that. You know, you've lost that perspective that I've talked about. So it's very much about, let's look at what's happening over your whole 24/7. So for me, healthy sleep comes from healthy 24/7 habits. So, for example, as well as kind of getting some good bedtimes and getting up times in place and really supporting them to sleep well during the hours that they can afford to allocate to sleep. And, you know, I will really encourage people that they need a decent sleep opportunity. So that's, you know, giving their body the chance to be asleep and making sure they can use that opportunity. But in addition to that, we'll be looking at the daytime, you know, how much stress are they under at work? You know, this is where it ties into resilience. You know, what are they doing to kind of take their stress levels down a little bit throughout the day? So I'm a big fan of kind of learning how to, this might resonate with you, but we need to learn to be able to be on and then off, but through the day. So it's not just like on, collapse at home, have beers and fall asleep on the sofa off. It's like I can step up, then I can take a couple of minutes to back off. And that, you know, we're designed as humans to cycle between alert and resting and kind of bringing that into the daily habits. So, you know, lots of practical suggestions around that, like put a reminder on your phone, step away from your computer, breathe, stretch, go outside, you know, that kind of thing. But yeah,
one of the things that's very challenging, certainly when I've talked to people or done coaching sessions and things, is that it's a bit of a leap of faith, because you're asking people who are incredibly busy to stop, and they're like, but hang on, you're not, you know, and so how do you help them take that leap of faith?
Yeah, and it is a leap of faith, you're right. But I think it's this myth that if you keep pushing, you achieve more. and I often talk about athletes. Athletes, their trainers don't say, just keep training. And by the way, you're not performing well enough, do some more training. A good trainer will say, right, you're going to train, you're going to perform, and then you're going to rest and recover. And I think it was in the recent Olympics where a trainer was saying it can be really hard to get an athlete to stop because they're natural, they want to perform. But I think that's where having some sort of mentor or coach can help to say, to really point out that actually your strategy, which is push, actually it's not delivering. You're not actually getting the results you want. And I think you're right, Alison, that when we're stressed, we are in this loop of, too much adrenaline, too much cortisol, and it can become addictive. And then people fuel that with coffee and stuff. So it's about gradually, weaning people off that adrenaline cycle. And then once people get a small sniff of what it's like to actually sit back and relax, even if it's only for 2 minutes. So I do quite a lot of practical stuff about, let's calm the body down and see how you feel afterwards. And that's how I got into all this, just doing some relaxation exercises, and people would go, my goodness me, that's amazing. And I say, breathe, it's free. You can do it. You don't have to pay anyone for it. It's easy. A few breaths. What could be better?
Yeah, and we certainly advocate that as well. Like you say, if it's just letting off and just stop, breathe through, and just calm yourself down for resting. Yeah. And here's the thing. So, our brains as well, is there a piece around having a self-fulfilling prophecy? Because I know I certainly used to do that. I used to think, I'm going to go to bed. I'm never going to sleep. And of course, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but actually going to bed with more of a mindset of, I can't wait to get some sleep and wake up refreshed. That actually really worked for me, just trying to stop being so negative about it. Going, I'm never going to sleep anyway. There's no point going upstairs.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, that happens. And usually by the time people are contacting me, they've got really switched off from their sleep, and it's something they don't look forward to. And in my therapy, if you like, I talk a lot about wanting to rebuild a positive association between the bed and sleep. It's a bit like if you've got an animal, a dog, say, the dog knows that when you rattle a drawer, you're getting out the bowl for food or something, the dog gets all happy. We need to rebuild a positive conditioning. So, you go into your bedroom and you immediately start to feel ready and anticipating good sleep. And what happens is that people that struggle with sleep, they spend hours in bed struggling to sleep, getting more and more wound up. So the bed and bedroom becomes associated with struggle and not sleeping, and you've broken that positive association. So a lot of CBTI is about rebuilding that positive association, and then looking at the thoughts. I've heard people say there's something wrong with me. It's supposed to be natural. Why can't I sleep? It's me. It's just who I am. I've never been a good sleeper. I know I'm not going to sleep well. And from your work that once you have those thoughts, they're going to set off an anxious response. So you're right. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And there's a job to be done about actually those thoughts aren't going to help you sleep. And we need to work on practicing and trying out different ways that actually, because we know the connection in mind and body. If you have an anxious thought, your system's going to kick off. And if you've got an anxious system, you're not going to sleep, because we're not designed to sleep when we're feeling anxious. Nature doesn't want us to sleep if we think there's a threat.
Could be a bear out there ready to come in the cave. Yeah.
So, don't fight that. If you're anxious, don't try and sleep, because your body's not going to let you.
Right. And that's interesting. So in that scenario, particularly people have a lot of bad dreams, or like you say, are anxious, because I found that again, you go to bed and you think, oh my God, I've just done my work twice. I've dreamt about it. I might as well get up and do it, because I'm going to dream about it and do it. I'm going to end up doing it twice. Once in my sleep and once in real life. So, how do you quieten your mind? aside like this bit of coaching for me while we're here, Frances?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think everybody needs, I certainly need to do that on a regular basis. I don't think it's something you should reserve just for when you're not sleeping. I think, and especially during lockdown, it's been much harder for people to draw a line onto their working days. So quietening your mind really is making sure that you've dealt with everything, so that if thoughts come into your mind when you're trying to sleep, you can say, no, I've got that covered. Now's not the time to be thinking about it. So, really simple practices like doing, before you finish work, do your list, your to-do list, who you need to phone next door. And then, anything on your mind. Journaling is a really good thing. If you've got concerns, write out your worries, talk to somebody, whatever. But the act of writing, as I'm sure you talk about, is very powerful. So if you've got a situation that's causing you bother, write it down. It doesn't matter what you write, but you're externalizing it, which is very helpful. And then, have a nice wind down in the evening, a relaxed, sociable time. Of course, come off your mobile phone. So much easier said than done. But, it's just like you're scrolling and it's very engaging and it's going to get your brain thinking again, whether it's pleasant thoughts or whatever. And then I often think it's a bit like, we have to parent ourselves. So, if you've had children of your own or babysat, and the little toddler gets up in the middle of the night and says, I want my, whatever toy. I'm a bit out of touch with kids' toys, but when my kids were young, it was train sets or whatever. But, that equivalent, I want my train set. No, it's not the time for your train set. So I say, I'll say that to myself. Now is not the time to be thinking about this, Frances. Leave it till tomorrow. So you kind of have to be that parent, it is not the time. We do not do good thinking. I know we can have good ideas at night, but that's a different process. That's actually when you're asleep and, stuff's being shunted around. So you wake up in the morning with an aha moment, but that comes from good sleep. It doesn't come from lying awake, doing your work twice, Kathy, which is horrible. I sometimes do that.
And what's really fascinating for us, you talk about your own experience there, so has there been times where resilience or sleep has been quite challenging for you, and what do you do?
Yeah, well, I think I had to build resilience from day one, really. I mean, I didn't come from parents who were particularly resilient, and so I didn't have any kind of useful early life lessons about it. I think I went right through, my 20s and 30s and had a couple of crashes because I wasn't resilient. I kind of was quite disconnected from what was happening, so I'd be stressed, but I wouldn't really be noticing it, so it came out in physical ill health rather than me noticing what was happening for me. Kind of it got more extreme than it needed to. So resilience for me is something that I've had to kind of really build up slowly, and I've I've had to learn to take much more notice of how I'm feeling, how I'm thinking. I've had to learn to be my own best friend because, like many people, I can be incredibly self-critical. And I think when you're self-critical, it sets off a lot of anxiety and you lie awake thinking awful things that you should have done, could have done. So I think resilience is I'd love to hear more about, I'm sure that sort of negative talk and self-criticism and inner critic, as they call it, is a big thing that needs kind of countering when you're building your resilience. But yeah, for me, my husband's just been really unwell, actually. And I was brilliant at coping with the immediate, got to do this. And then it was afterwards, I went into this kind of, oh my gosh, I feel really out of sorts and the world seems to have changed. I mean, he's doing really well. So in my head, I was having, there's nothing to worry about, Frances. You've got a really good outcome. He's well, he's doing well. He's got the medication done. But that was my thought, but my body was going, oh, this has been terrible. It's been shocking. And for me, it took a bit of a few friends saying, but for me, it was like, right, you just need to have some space. So I took a lot of pressure off myself work-wise. I haven't been out there nearly as much. I talked to some good friends that kind of acknowledged the impact on me. But for me, it was just like, take the pressure off yourself, Frances. You need to allow this to kind of process. I think in my 20s, 30s, even 40s, I'd have just pushed on.
we've had conversations about this, and because Kathy's a single mum of 4 kids, and we've all been through a lot, and we decided that we would actually take the summer, and we've called it our creative summer. So we're not going to not work, but we're going to do it differently. We're not going to book appointments on laptops and anything like that. We're just going to still explore the things we're interested in, but to have a different way of being for 5-6 weeks, just to allow that ability to recharge.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you're doing that. Yeah, I'm taking the summer off as well. So.
Yay. Brené Brown is doing it as well. I got the idea from Brené Brown. I'll be absolutely honest. It wasn't,
And I think the pandemic's impacted. I think people are reassessing what they want a little bit more. Do you know what I mean? When before, I think the pandemic was a bit of a reset for all of us as well. Definitely.
I mean, I had people clients saying to me, it's really nice to have dinner with the kids, and they realise what they've been missing, with their long commutes and everything, and but equally there were people that just found it really hard to log off and kept going back and doing more, and those boundaries, the commute is useful in that it's a buffer time, and but so. Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's two sides. Some people slept better and enjoyed it, and other people have found it especially people working in their bedrooms or, tough.
Yeah. And then what you were saying earlier, having that relationship with your bedroom, it's not a set, you're not departmentalizing it, say the word,
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you are working in your bedroom, then it's definitely about tidying up at the end of the working day. And, I often say put a sheet or something over the work stuff so you're not, put it in a cupboard or under the bed if you can, so it's out of eyesight.
Yeah, logging off.
Yeah, logging off properly.
Exactly. And I guess because we've only got a few minutes left, I knew this would go really quick as well, but I guess what would be interesting is, if we could help people around us to improve their sleep, that improves their resilience, what would you do? What would you say to them? How can we help others to become better sleepers?
I think it's taken on board that it needs to be prioritized in your day, and to understand that actually the better you sleep, the better able you're going to be able to do the things you really want and love to do in your life. So kind of thinking about how much, we all think a good night's sleep is good for us, but how much attention do we really pay it, and kind of move it up the agenda. And then get help before it's too late. I don't mean too late, but get help sooner, because sleep problems nipped in the bud are easier to turn around, obviously. But having said that, don't worry if you do sleep badly, because it's very common. 1 in 10 people have insomnia across the globe, so it's a really common problem. Don't panic. You're not alone, and there's plenty of good help out there. But the minute you notice that you're starting to enter a struggle with sleep, then kind of have a think about what's happening for you. And I think in families too, actually, one thing I would say is have a conversation about sleep. And especially at the end of the summer holidays, when everyone's having to get back into new routines, it's like, tell your kids that sleep needs to be a higher priority. Set that expectation that you're going to need, to sleep well as a parent, but also the kids. We're bringing up the next generation of adults, and sometimes some of the things that are happening means the next generation of adults are going to have quite serious sleep problems if we shift it around.
That's excellent advice. Thank you so much. And my kids are going to love you, because I've just noted that. And also, they're not having their devices tonight before they go to bed. So there you go.
You have to be very firm for that. The kids,
exactly.
Be strong. Be strong.
You and I can be very popular in my house. But thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate it, Frances. It's fascinating, and I think we can all take something from that.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
No, it's been great. And just for our network, we'll be continuing to host these Resilient Matters, talking to people throughout a number of industries and functions to get new perspectives. So if anybody listening to this would like to be our guest, please do get in touch. And you can do that through our website, which is ivegotthis.co.uk. Also on that website, we do have a free copy of 101 Ways to Build Your Mental Strength. So something there for everybody. So on that, I'd like to thank you again, Frances. Well done, Alison, for keeping through. I know you probably really need a good cough. And yeah, we will see you all next week. Oh, sorry. All right, see you soon.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.